Correct. Learned that the hard way a couple of times.
You could have saved yourself a lot of
Yeah.
out of the way travel by the functionality on a good app like ours.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of Plugged In with ACDI Energy Services. I'm Zach Parker, and I'm excited to be joined today by Damian Cairns, Sales Director for ACDI Energy Services. Damian has been with the ACDI Energy team for essentially since the beginning, and he's here with us at HQ today, all the way from Delray Beach, Florida. We appreciate you being here, Damian.
Appreciate you having me.
Yeah, so we've spent the last few episodes of Plugged In kind of focusing on the hardware side of things. You know, we talked about the various plug types, the various charging levels, and how to achieve maximum output with your charging station. So today we're going to shift gears a little bit and we're going to focus on the software side of things. Now, this is something that has been in the news recently with the announcement that Shell Recharge will soon be shutting down its U.S. operation. So fortunately, ACDI Energy Services is not going anywhere. So Damian and I are excited to take some time today to walk you through kind of the ins and outs of our ACDI Energy Services charging station software and what it provides both for station owners and EV drivers as well. So Damian, we'll get into kind of some specifics and various features here in a little bit, but to start, why don't you tell us a little bit about the importance of software in charging stations? Because, you know, I mean, in my mind, I'm thinking, let's use kitchen appliances as an example. You know, when I want to use a toaster, I just plug in a toaster. When I want to use a blender, I just plug in a blender. I don't need any software on the back end. I just plug it in and get rolling. So why, with a charging station, is this software so important?
So I don't know how often you use let your neighbors use your toaster, but it would be the equivalent, right? These are public devices. They're the implications from a cost standpoint and potentially a revenue standpoint makes you want to have complete control and visibility into what's going on, because, you know, as I mentioned, this isn't just trickling out, you know, energy through a 110 outlet.
Sure.
If you're talking about level 3 charging, DC fast charging, that's dispensing a lot of energy, and you just don't want to be giving that away.
Yeah. So kind of moving along from there, you know, I understand that complete visibility and device control is a primary feature of our software. What exactly does that provide to a charging station owner?
So we always say that the software is kind of like the lifeblood of the charger, right? It is what makes that thing tick. If you did not have the software, you're really looking at a souped up extension cord.
Sure.
Right? And if you're putting it out there for the public to use, you probably don't want to let anyone just come and plug in and take free electricity. I mean, you wouldn't do that with a gas station out in front of your place of business.
Right.
So, you know, think of the software as a way to control not only access, but, you know, complete reporting on what is happening when people access that thing. How much electricity are you dispensing? What does that cost you? And that allows you to make sure that the delta between your cost and, you know, your profit is where you want it to be. And to give you, we're kind of doing this simultaneously with sharing screens here, or my laptop. If you look at my dashboard that I have up, our software right now, at a quick glance, I can see all the vitals, right? How many charging sessions are happening? What does that equate to revenue-wise? How much energy did it take to generate that revenue? If I'm in a state like California, do I have credits or incentives like carbon offset credits that I can turn in and be reimbursed for?
Yeah.
So at a quick glance, you can get a lot of vitals, see what's going on, and just make sure everything's going the way you planned for it to go with your charger or chargers.
Yeah, and that information is available in real time all the time, right, for a charging station owner?
You can access that 24/7, 365 through the software platform, which is essentially a cloud-based platform, much like you would expect any smart device to run from or on.
Yeah, and so kind of moving right along, billing and payment control is another key feature. Why is that a key feature? Because I'm thinking in my mind, if I, for example, owned a charging station, I mean, in theory, wouldn't I just charge the same price to anybody? Or, what's the value in that feature?
So the real value is flexibility, right? Having the ability to control not only who can access your chargers, but how much each identifiable group pays for a charging session. I'll give you an example. Here at ACDI, we've got chargers out front, and we've got a driver group set up where employees, if they're driving an EV or our EV, they can plug in and essentially get free charging.
Okay.
Right? So it'd be like having a free gas pump out there for some employees around here that have
It's a nice
EVs.
perk for the EV drivers.
Excellent perk. You could do different tiers of access and cost, right? So maybe the C-suite gets free charging, management team gets, cost charging, but then you talk about opening up to the general public, which ours is, obviously, and we charge a nominal fee to cover the cost of our electric and, do good for the community. So you see where one environment, one use case could accommodate a bunch of different user groups.
Yeah.
But, on the other hand, you may have a fleet scenario where, you've got a company that's got a fenced area that has all your fleet vehicles, vans, buses, trucks, whatever. You may not want the general public to access that because it's behind a fence, it's secure. So you can completely shut that down to public use and just allow the fleet drivers to access that and again, control payment or the financial side according to what your goal is at the end of the day.
Yeah, and that also gets into possibilities with tiered pricing, right? Like, for example, I know that we've got some resellers that have sold charging stations at large arenas, sporting arenas, for example. And so, for that specific use case, let's say that the arena is anticipating a very large crowd for, a certain game, a certain event, maybe a concert. If they wanted to, they could raise the rate knowing that there's going to be more people arriving at that time, correct?
Absolutely. So the pricing is obviously dynamic. You could do that manually. You could change that manually, which is kind of, I think, what I'm hearing, the scenario you're describing. Or for day-to-day use, when electricity prices fluctuates, you could create dynamic pricing that mimics, the ups and downs of raw cost of electricity. So there are a couple of different ways you could.
Okay. And so that obviously would ensure that the station owner isn't losing money by, having someone use their charging station.
Correct. Absolutely.
All right. So again, moving right along, let's segue into another feature, data and reporting. You touched on it a little bit earlier, but I'm thinking like the stats on the back of a baseball card. Like that's cool information to know. It's nice to, if I'm talking about a certain player, it's nice to have some batting average, some on-base percentage, stolen bases, things like that I can throw out there of look how knowledgeable I am about this player. But realistically, what am I gaining from knowing certain information about what's going on with my charging station? What's the value in that?
Well, what do they say? Data is the new currency. So the more data you have about your environment, your business, your EV charging, whatever it is, generally speaking, the better. Not being in the dark as to what what's happening in your environment is very helpful and useful. You can do a lot with that. Not only from a cost perspective, managing your costs perhaps. Hey, I don't want to have this thing available 24/7 because it's, the cost associated with that is getting up there. When we get into DC fast charging, level 3 charging, there's a thing called demand charge. And demand charge, without going too deep into the weeds, if you pass through a minimum threshold within a certain amount of time, let's say it's a 15-minute time period, and you pass through 100 kilowatts of use at your business, you're now flagged by the electric company, the provider, that you're a high user, right? And they will charge you a premium for that. So having that visibility and control to not pass through that threshold, that's important. A lot of car dealers are figuring that out the hard way, which we've helped a lot understand what's going to happen. So just that type of thing with regard to reporting and knowing what's going on. But then, as I mentioned also, we've got reporting through the software for credits, right? Yeah. So in California, if you're keeping, the environment clean, you've got carbon credits, which at the end of the month you can turn in for cash rebates, right? And all that reporting is done through the back end through the software. So there's different ways to look at the reporting and what's valuable to you as an end user, but without software, none of that is possible.
Okay, so I guess it is at least a little bit more valuable than knowing how many home runs Shohei Ohtani hit last year, right? Okay. So we've talked a lot about kind of the benefits for charging station owners. What about for EV drivers? Like if I'm out, driving around in my Tesla or in our ACDI Energy Services Ford Lightning, what do I gain or what benefits are there for me as an EV driver for utilizing a charging station that does have comprehensive software on it similar to ours?
So the first thing I would say is just being able to find charging, right? Our app, as do many others, they're going to identify the charging stations. And depending on what app you're using, some could show all the chargers out there that are publicly available. Others could show just the network that you're on. But being able to find charging is one of the biggest things right now as far as the driver side of the software. Yeah. From there, it's convenience with access. You're going to engage with a charger to get the charge, to make the charge happen. So for non-EV drivers out there, the best analogy that I have is think about a parking app. At a lot of public parking facilities, you're not popping quarters into, a parking meter. You're actually accessing the meter through an app with your credit card tied to it on the back end. So it's the same type of convenience. You don't necessarily have to, pull out a credit card or anything like that. It's just seamless interaction through the app. And then we've got 24/7 support for our app and our drivers. So that helps too. Yeah,
all key benefits. I can say from personal experience, I had the pleasure a couple of years ago of making a nice EV road trip from right here in Benton, Arkansas, all the way up into Ohio. Ended up in Cleveland, Lima. So along the way, I was visiting a lot of different charging stations, and even just as you touched on in the beginning, that visibility on Apple Maps or Google Maps or whatever I'm using to know where charging stations was crucial. was crucial.
And to that point, I do remember that trip quite well, although I was not on it. You could, some of the apps did not have information on there that the charger was actually down.
Correct. Learned that the hard way a couple of times.
You could have saved yourself a lot of out of the way travel by the functionality on a good app like ours.
Clearly a lot of benefits there, and honestly, clearly a lot of benefits both for station owners and for EV drivers as well. So before we wrap up, Damian, is there anything else that maybe we didn't touch on that you think we should hit? You're an expert in this field. You know this software frontward and backward, and you know this space as well as anyone. So let's make sure we give our viewers out there all the information they need. Is there anything else you want to touch on?
Absolutely. So, I'll give a little bit of a perspective here on the market as it stands today. Today, if you're going to get into the EV charging space as a site host, make sure you ask about software. The first generation of EV site hosts, so the people that are buying and putting these out in front of their business or wherever it may be, there was a lot of skipping over things such as software that help you manage and reap revenue from those things. So as we go back and talk to even early adopters of chargers, they may be completely unaware that they have software available to them.
Sure, yeah.
So I would say that especially if you're getting into it today, I would not move forward without the software unless it was a really unusual use case. It's extremely important, it's extremely valuable, and if you're going to get into the game, you may as well do it right.
Yeah.
I would say that, if you're out there and you're a potential reseller, we work through resellers. We've got partners nationwide. If you would like any information on how to get into this space, as far as selling and supporting EV charging, please reach out to us. We've got a great program in place. We can tell you all about that. If you're the general public and just want more education, more knowledge on the space, we're happy to do that too. That's a big part of what we're here for, is to educate, to talk about things like software that can make a huge difference in your experience as a site host. Or if you're looking for EV chargers in general, we're happy to get you going in the right direction with the right people.
Yeah, absolutely, Damian. And one other thing that you didn't touch on there, but I think is important to mention is, the fact that our software doesn't necessarily have to be used with charging stations that are purchased through us or through our resellers, correct?
So, a very important part of our software and the industry in general, hardware should be what's called OCPP compliant, which basically means you can put any network software on a piece of hardware. So yes, we have preferred OEM vendors that we work with. However, if you are a charger owner or know someone who does not have software, and this intrigues or sounds good, let us know. We're happy to take a look at your hardware, see if it is OCPP compliant, and if so, we can get our software up on those chargers and help you get some of the value that we've talked about today as a site owner or charger owner. So yeah, we can be ubiquitous as far as where we're at, what we're on from a hardware perspective. So please reach out if you are just interested in software.
Yeah, for sure. And that also ties into what we said at the beginning with the recent news about Shell Recharge. If you're someone who has been maybe left in the dark a little bit with that shutdown, definitely give Damian a call, and we'd love to help you out.
Appreciate the plug.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks again, everyone, and we'll see you in the next episode of Plugged In with ACDI Energy Services.